Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Booth. I'm filling in for Randy Cunningham tonight, who's on special assignment. I'm joined tonight with Phil Harris, that's at the transplant games down in Birmingham, and our special guest tonight is from Sandrock High School, Coach Russell Jacoway. Coach Jacoway, thanks for joining us tonight, and welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm glad to get on, talk a little ball, and whatever you got planned.
Good deal. We were talking before we went on the air. It's hard to believe that you've been out of coaching for 10 years now.
Yeah, it is. I look back now, and even to me, it's like, I just retired recently. And, but, when I went to change professions, and I thought I'd do this for maybe 5 years, and it's worked out really well. And so, yeah, it's been 10 years now.
I know the people at Sandrock really do miss you. You transitioned that football team into a state powerhouse for many, many years there at Sandrock.
Well, maybe the ones that still remember me do. I don't know.
Well, they got to remember you. The stadium was named after you.
Yeah, that was one of the greatest honors I ever had. I guess I kidded them and told them that I always thought that they did that just so I'd still mow the grass. and I guess in the idea of it being named after me before I retired and actually getting to coach in there, in the stadium with my name on the press box, that was a big deal to me personally.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been to many ball games out there, and the PA announcer would come on. Y'all got 2 or 3 things that a lot of other schools don't do. One of them is that the PA announcer come on, welcome you to Russell Jacoway Stadium there. And you already said that's a big honor for you to be able to coach in there. Another thing that Sandrock has always done that other schools don't do is other schools would have a victory line, but y'all had a victory walk in front of your bleachers onto the field. Do you know when that started?
I started it. I got the idea. I'm an Auburn alumnus after going to an Auburn game and got down there early one day and watched the Tiger Walk. And it just struck me. I thought, okay, we can do something like that and involve more of our fans. And that's what got it started. And I got with Lisa Burt, who was our cheer coach at the time. And she thought, well, that's a great idea. And, I've actually had officials heard officials before the game. They're saying, hey, you need to tell young officials, you need to watch this. This is pretty neat. And so, it just kind of created a really neat tradition.
And then the third thing that y'all do that a lot of other schools do as well, but y'all were the first one that I remember seeing and hearing and doing it. And Phil will love this. As soon as the game's over with, y'all crank up QSB scoreboard and let everybody listen to the scores.
Yeah, that was we had a lot of fans that would actually kind of hang out to hear those first scores before they left. And that one just came out of the blue. And, I thought everybody wanted to hear Phil. That's why we did it.
No,
I know. And you were right. I've been there many times where people would, when the game's over with, instead of getting up and going, it's like, okay, we had a tailgate party. Let's have a post-gate party. And people would just sit around in the bleachers and listen to the scoreboard for 20, 30 minutes.
Well, I guess I've got a lot of PR about me. I always thought, I might have been a good PR guy. I was always looking for other things to add to the program or, just little things to make it a little better. The experience, like colleges do, the experience in the stadium, that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And something else that y'all do that is pretty cool, unless you're the visiting team, is you have the visitors dressed next to the home side, the home stands there. And when they take the field, they have to go through the home side to get on to the field.
Well, yeah, it was that way for years, and that's kind of been eliminated now because they remodeled the stadium about 5 years ago, put in new home side, new home bleachers, and so now they have to dress in the old gym.
Oh, okay. That's still a good little walk. That's a little gamesmanship there, having the team have to walk so far, right?
Yeah, it is. It's not too far. It's not as far away as we had to walk at some places, but at one time we dressed and the visitors dressed in that old field house till we built the new one. And so we would actually be nothing but just one wall between us and the visitors.
So let me ask you, with that, knowing that, how often did you walk in and tell your players to be quiet where you could hear the other coaches, what they may be saying?
No, I never did that. What I would tell them to be careful about what they said and be quiet, because I didn't want the other team to hear any of our kids say anything derogatory about them, because there are a lot of times, and I'm not going to name the opponents, that we heard some screaming and some things said about us from the other dressing room. And I can promise you, I use that.
And you're talking about other opponents. Let's kind of switch gears a little bit. Back in the 90s and 2000s, you and Fife and Coach Benefield kind of had a little rivalry going on there, being in 2A and all that, facing each other every year. What is your thoughts on those games back then?
I love playing Paul Benefield, for one thing. I'll just tell you, his kids are well coached and they will hit you, but they are clean. That's the thing I've always felt about Fife. We laugh about it sometimes. He told me one time, he said, when I first came to Fife, you were a better coach than me. And then a few years later, I was a better coach than you were. And so it's all about talent. And he beat me more times than I beat him. But I did like playing them because of just the style of ball they played. I enjoyed, to me, playing Fife and playing Clay County was a lot alike. They were very physical games, but they were very clean games. And at the end of the games, both teams shook hands. There wasn't a lot of mouthing off. There was a time, and I don't remember the date, when Fife's quarterback moved to Sandrock. And a kid by the name of Josh Stimson, great kid. Paul loved him, but some family things, and he came to Sandrock. We go up there to play, and I'm thinking, okay, this may get dirty. And it never got dirty. Josh said the kids were very classy toward him that night. And I gained an even larger respect, that night, because of the way we were treated and the way he was treated. And so Fife does it the right way. And so I've got a lot of respect for them.
I remember being down at the coaches clinic down in, I think we was in Huntsville that year. They had it in Huntsville for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And I was sitting at the table there, and Coach Benefield came over and sat down, and me and him was talking. And he saw you walking through, and he hollered, "Hey, Coach Jacoway." And you came over, and boy, I tell you what, I wish I had a recorder to be able to just record some of those stories that y'all was talking about from back in the days.
I love Coach Bennett. He's one of those that I just really, really admire. And, when I got out, he has stayed in it and just kept on trucking. And there was a time when our win total was pretty close, but not anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll ask you one more question, and we'll move you on over to Phil. And Coach, I ask everybody this, and so everybody knows the question that's coming up. You coached for all those years. Did you have some type of superstition or something that you had to do before the game?
Not really. I was real superstitious about my clothes. There were some years there when we'd get on a winning streak, and maybe my wife would be busy, and I had ironed my game night clothes. And from then on, I was going to iron my clothes every ball game. I wouldn't let her touch them. And I had some coaches. James Rowe was my defensive coordinator when we won the state championship. He told me when the season was over, he wore the same socks every ball game. And so just things like that. I tell you what I would do. Every Thursday night, I would leave the house and just get in my car for about 30 minutes and just ride around Sandrock. And some people thought I was out looking to see if kids were out or something like that. That was just my time to de-stress a little bit. I'd get out, turn on some I'm a big classic rock guy. So if you heard me out on that night, it was loud that the Rolling Stones or the Doobie Brothers or somebody would play it really loud. And so that was my way to de-stress. And that was something I did almost every Thursday night before we played on Friday.
That's awesome, Coach. I enjoy hearing what some of them says. Coach Benefield was on here, and I asked him one night what it was, and he said, the only thing I got right now is I make Jody drive to all the ball games, and he just sits back and he just sits there and relaxes.
He's told me before, when they pull up at our place and Jody'd be driving the truck, and he told me one time, he said, she always has to drive the ball games. And so I kind of gave him both a hard time about that.
Well, Coach, I'm going to turn you over to Phil. I know he's got a lot of questions to ask you, and so Phil, take us away.
All right. Well, Coach, I want to ask, let's go back to family a little bit. Of course, I know you've two daughters. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I know, as uh, I had looked up a little bit on that stuff, but it's Christina and Amy. And of course, you're a grandfather. Tell us a little bit about your family.
Okay. Well, my wife, of course, is retired now. And my wife is a cancer survivor. She just rang the bell about 2 months ago. And that, we went through that over the winter, the treatments and things like that. But we got lucky that they diagnosed it early. And she stays busy, helps her mother. Her mother is a widower now, and they still have a cattle farm. So she goes over there and helps them a lot. My youngest daughter, Christina, has one daughter who's in the 2nd grade. She is the bottom end of my grandkids. She's the youngest one. And she is a manager in the city of Guest, and she runs Nakalula Falls. And she is also the landscape design director for the city of Guest. My oldest daughter, oddly enough, is the cheer coach at Sand Rock High School now, and teaches home ec in the same classroom her mother taught in there for years. And they have 4 kids. Her oldest daughter, Michaela, actually has 2. So I'm actually a great grandparent. And then down to Amy's youngest son, there's Alex, who just got married. Actually, this is an odd one too. My oldest grandson, Alex, married Coach Rowe, who was my defensive coordinator on the state championship team, married his granddaughter. And about a month ago. And so I kidded him, telling him we were finally kin to each other after all these years. And then Gunner, the middle child, the middle boy for Amy, he is in school now and working some. And then Gatlin, the youngest one, will be a senior running back at Sand Rock this year. And he's a pretty good football player, so I've enjoyed going and watching him.
Yeah, that's great to be able to, to spend a lot more time with family. In the early days in coaching, it kind of took you away from a lot of the family things, I'm sure, and that's where your wife was important.
Yeah, but here's the odd thing about that. We had the 2 girls. Amy was always a cheerleader. Actually cheered at Jacksonville State after she graduated. The youngest one, Christina, was a ball player. She was a basketball player, that kind of thing. She was a manager for me all the way from about the 4th grade all the way through her sophomore year in college. She just liked being on the sidelines and being part of the action. I mean, she was just about an assistant coach by the time she was a senior in high school. And so I had them with me, and they were both on the buses on game night. And so actually it was my wife that had to find somebody to ride the ball games with her. And her father always rode with her. I coached at Sand Rock for 32 years. Her daddy never missed a Sand Rock ball game the whole time I was there.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, Coach, let's talk a little bit about your coaching career. Of course, it started in 1983, your first year. Of course, you spent 2 years as an assistant, I think, was at Smith Station in Lake County before you got the job.
I was 3 years at Early County, Georgia, and 2 at Smith Station before I came to Sand Rock. And can we skip 83?
Well, I kind of wanted to touch on that. And the reason is, I know you finished 0-10 that year,
yeah.
but I'm sure that was a huge learning experience, because you had to get your feet wet, get the kids, incremented, into what you were selling. But that had to be a hard year mentally.
It was a hard year on my family, especially because a lot of things in the bleachers were said that year, that I would be fired at the end of the year. But the thing about that group of kids and the coaches, I had 2 assistants at that time, James Rowe and Roland Hendon. We're still real close to this day. Our families are. We went 0-10, but we never quit. We didn't have kids to quit. And we played our best ball at the end of the year that year. And I only had 4 seniors, and they've always felt like they went out on a bad note. But I've always told them they kind of helped set the foundation for what was to come.
Yeah, definitely. So, and you started off the next year. I think you win the first two by narrow margins, but it carried over. And if you end the year on a good note, a lot of times it carries over. And I know you won the first two games, and that's kind of what I want to get into, where you started building to a state championship. Of course, I was on the team at Valley Head when you came to Valley Head, but that night the wheels run off. I remember it's maybe the opening play. We run a cross. I was on the left side, and we run a cross block where the guard and tackle cross blocks, and I was able to take out the linebacker, and Jeff Burke went right off my hip and went like 80 yards for a touchdown early, and it kind of stunned Sandrock, and they just never recovered.
We lost. Y'all were better than us to begin with, but you're exactly right. We lost all poise that night. We lost.
Mm-hmm.
We lost all discipline that night, as much as anybody I've ever had, and it spiraled out of control. We had a couple of kids kicked out of the ball game and some things. And if you remember back then at Valley Head, you dressed in that fire hall across the road over there. And by the time we left to get on the bus, left out, our kids still remember, by the time that we left that fire hall to get on the bus, they had already turned off the lights in the stadium. And almost everybody was gone. They were just waiting for us to finally leave so they could turn off the lights in there. And there was probably a little bit of paint missing off the wall in there by the time we left that night. But we got a lot of things straight after that ball game in that dressing room before we ever got on the bus. And that experience had a lot to do with us getting better.
Yeah, definitely. Because I remember in the game where y'all kind of lost it, and a couple of players got penalties for fighting, and and it was kind of like you kind of sit back and go, why didn't these guys fight us when the money was on the line? But I read I read that Fire on the Mountain story, and it talks about this where you kind of had a come to Jesus meeting, so to speak, after that football game, and that was the turning point for this program, I believe.
And I've sat and told these stories with John Kirby before, and we've talked about this because one of the kids that got kicked out, it was a late hit on John, and he said, "Boy, it hurt." I said, "Yeah, but it didn't hurt no more the rest of the night because that was my best defensive end, and he was gone." And we talked about how it transpired into the playoff game, which I'm sure you're going to get to, and
Yes.
And how things improved for us during the year, how we used that game to build off of. And but I've enjoyed sitting, like I said, with John and telling those stories over the years about that ball game.
Yeah, definitely. So, of course, in the rematch in the second round, of course, Jeff Burke got hurt in the opening round game. He got hit on the knee late in the ball game. So he was very limited, and we knew going in we probably weren't going to be counting on him. So I know he took a pitch and he went to cut back, and one of the Sandrock players cut him down, but he didn't get up. And, of course, we were kind of expecting that. But you could feel the energy. I was on the field. You could feel the energy level. I think, Sandrock earlier was kind of trying to feel their way, but you could feel their energy level go to an extreme high after that play. They felt like, and you could sense it, they could win this ball game.
Yeah, we felt like we had a great game plan. It scared me to death. We had totally changed what we were doing defensively that week. We had gotten some help from some more experienced coaches, let's say. Bobby Joe Johnson at Cherokee County and his coaches had helped us a little bit with some stuff they had done versus the wishbone and things that y'all did. And we basically dared y'all to throw the football all night, and y'all wouldn't. And it made it a low scoring ball game and kind of gave us a chance to be in the ball game.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Coach, of course, I guess you will remember this, but this is what I remember what y'all did. Y'all was going to take away the off tackle hole, which was our bread and butter. And y'all did. And to me, y'all sold out. As a matter of fact, a lot of times during ball games, Coach Kirby would call me over to the sideline and ask what the defense was doing, and he would make adjustments to what I told him.
Yeah.
And in the ball game, if your tackle was shaded on my outside, he was coming in on a stunt, and the linebacker was going to the outside. If the tackle was head up me, he was going out, linebacker was coming inside. So y'all totally took away the off tackle holes. So Coach Kirby asked me when I went over to signing, he goes, what can we do? And I told him, I said, well, Coach, anything quick, because if we can get a hat on a linebacker, we can move the football. So he said, well, what do you suggest? And I said, well, quick 30, because our quick 30, I guess, was kind of like a veer type play where a fullback cheated up and John just turned and just give it to him quick. And John even a lot of times just patted Jeff on the tail, and they just run quarterback sneak. And that way we were able to run the ball some then, but y'all totally took away our off tackle.
Well, we knew we couldn't play Valley Head straight up and have a chance to win the ball game. I mean, we had to take chances. That's just the way it was at that point because y'all, we were outmanned.
Yeah, but those guys, and what surprised me, Coach, because we got a couple of key turnovers that kind of turned the tables on that game. I know I stripped the running back of the football and recovered a fumble, I think, that set up the field goal that tied the game. And then later we got another turnover. But without Jeff Burt, we were very limited. And, of course, that was to y'all. That helped y'all tremendously. But the impressive thing for me is when we got up 17-10, most of the time the other teams that we had played would be done. That would be it. But Lance Mackey took over in that fourth quarter and led them down the field, and y'all scored to cut it to 17-16. And that's where I become very impressed by Lance Mackey's poise and his field leadership. Lance
Mackey was a great leader, and he could get in the huddle and talk kids into doing things. I was his presenter at the Cherokee County when he went into the Cherokee County Hall of Fame. I told this story. The first year, he actually sat in the dressing room about mid-season after North Sand Mountain had beat us and told me I need to find another quarterback that he'd play anywhere that I want him to, but he just didn't think he was the guy. And I assured him he was, and that good things would eventually happen. And of course, they did. And we threw the ball a little bit more back in that day than most people did. And he was very effective as a thrower, and we had a couple of kids that could catch the ball. And we had a great late drive, and I made the choice to go for 2 instead of going into overtime, and to try to win the ball game. Of course, not successful. But I did not think we had a chance to beat Valley Head in overtime from the 10-yard line in.
Yeah, well, Coach, I remember because y'all scored on the play, and you kind of went back to the same type of play. And, kind of sort of, in the old days, a lot of times you could kind of run a pick play. Well, Jeff Harrison fought through that pick and had the goal line covered. Because I remember I slid out when Lance rolled out of the pocket. I slid out with him. And really, I was the only guy between him and the goal line. And I was like, if he runs, he will score and they'll beat us.
I had that exact conversation with Lance about 3 weeks ago. And it still haunts him to this day. And,
I know it does. I was the only guy, and here I am I'm the 240 pounds, and there's no way, unless I would have guessed right, that I could have stopped him.
He brought that up, and we're both on the Cherokee County Hall of Fame Board of Directors now. And after we'd had a meeting, we got talking, and he brought that exact thing up. He said, I tried to throw the football, and if I had just turned up and run, I feel sure I could have scored. And so he's in his 50s now and still remembers that play.
Yeah, he would have. When he stopped, I knew, and he raised that arm, I was like, thank God. And so he threw it back toward the middle of the field to the tight end, but then Jeff Bain come off his man and knocked the ball down in the back of the end zone. But it was a great football game. And I have read that to Fire on the Mountain, and the story is told, that's one of those things. Sometimes you'll read an article or a book and it's not up to par to what really happened, but everything in that book was exactly the same way I saw it. And
Scott Wright did a great job with that.
Yes.
Oddly enough, the guy that wrote that book played quarterback at Cedar Bluff at that time. Yeah. And, which really gave him a different perspective of the whole thing. We're really good friends now. We've done a radio show together here in the county for a while. And he had a great perspective, I thought, writing that book, the way it came out. It's an easy read.
Yeah, definitely. So, and, and the thing was, and it talks about in the book where that game kind of, why not us? Even though you lost the football game, in the off season, the Sandrock team took that as motivation. But that also did us a whole lot of good. We may not have won a state championship game had y'all not stepped up and gave us that battle, because all three of our remaining playoff games were just like that, down to the wire, grueling, because we had to go to work, and it was Iron Man football because we just had to pick up our level of play on the defensive side of the football. And, of course, going into your 1985 team, defense was a key to your championship.
Yeah, we were extremely strong defensively, and but had Valley Head not have won the state championship in '84, I'm not sure we would have won it in '85. When Valley Head won the state championship, that convinced us that convinced our kids that we could win a state championship.
Hey guys, let me ask a question real quick. As far as this '84 game, where was it played at? Because it was a little bit before my time.
The regular season game was at Valley Head, and the officials were from Valley Head too, I think. But
you're always going to say that.
But and then the playoff game was at Sandrock.
What was the atmosphere? What was the crowd like at that game?
Both games, the stadium was full because we had won those first two games, and we had beaten Cedar Bluff the year before, and Sandrock had not beaten Cedar Bluff in like 6 or 7 years. And so our fans were starting to get a little bit excited, and everybody, Valley Head was rated highly. So we took a good crowd to Valley Head. And then, of course, that second round of the playoffs, I think everybody from Sandrock and every person that could breathe in Valley Head was there.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, Coach, of course, the way the playoff system, when it first worked, the area champion was at home first round, but the area runner-up traveled. So in the next round, if the area runner-up won, it made them play back at home, which really, when they first started, that was kind of a disadvantage.
Yeah, I think that was something they didn't foresee, was so many runner-ups winning in the first round. And, now, of course, it's different.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, Coach, talk a little bit about that 85 team. I know I think you maybe give up 53 points all year long. That team was on a mission. And, of course, you got down to the championship, played against championship game against Repton. And I know Repton turned, people will say, well, Repton I know they had a real good running back and a real good defensive lineman. But the thing is, I think they had, 7 turnovers. But Sandrock defensively created those turnovers. Well,
first thing I'm going to tell you about the 85 team, never coached a group of leaders like that in my life. They were special. I'm glad you can't see me now because I get a little choked up when I start talking about them sometimes. And I had done a presentation to some of our teachers at a workshop here not long ago about leadership. And I used that group as an example. And so many of them still live around here, and they're great family guys now. Coached a lot of them, son. Lance Mackey's son played tailback for me right at the end of my career. And but there was just something special about that group. They were not the greatest group of athletes I ever coached. I had 3 or 4 or 5 football teams that were better athletically than that group was. But they just had a never quit attitude. I mean, we were playing with a tailback on that 85 team that was 5'5" and weighed 140 pounds soaking wet. And he could scoot. I still remember us playing Collinsville that year, and there are people hanging over the fence before the game kind of laughing at him, saying, oh, we're going to kill him. And the first play he broke from scrimmage was 60 yards. The second play he broke from scrimmage was 65 yards. And so he had 125 yards rushing in 2 carries. And there are people hanging on the fence and we'd kill him if we could ever catch him. And he had a little scoot, and he had a no quit attitude. And the whole football team was just that way. We were not big up front. We were a little bit bigger defensively. Now we had a little bit of talent. Our linebackers for back in that day, 180, 190 pound kids, were pretty good sized kids. And we were pretty stout defensively all year long. And offensively, we didn't turn the ball over a lot. Now, Repton did. The first two series, we can't slow them down, and they turn the ball over. And those two first turnovers kind of turned that game around. I actually talked to Tommy Dukes, who was the big defensive tackle. He's like 6'7". He is an administrator down there now. And Repton's closed up, but he works in that school system. And I ran into him at an all-star volleyball game of all things. And he recognized my Sandrock shirt and came over and wanted to know if that old coach was still at Sandrock. And I said, yeah, he is. It's me. And and we sat down and talked the rest of the ball game. And he told me, he said, Coach, he said, we didn't think going into that game there was any way looking at film that y'all could beat us. And I looked at him, I said, well, Tommy, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but we didn't think there was any way y'all could beat us either. And when you just looked at the two teams on the field, you would think there was no way Sandrock had a chance.
Well, yeah, Coach, and I understand exactly what you say, because I remember after we beat y'all in the second round of the playoffs, Coach Steve King came on the bus and gave us a speech about, after the way we played in the second half, that he was all in before he was basketball first, but, we had won him over. And Coach Kirby, I heard him say, he goes, this team can't be beat. He goes, they're going to find a way. It doesn't matter what you throw at them. And I guess you felt that same way about Sandrock. Yeah.
The only time I doubted, we turned the ball over against Repton on our own 20. And I looked at Coach Rowe, who was my defensive coach, who had more experience than me. That we were the perfect staff. Roland Hendon and James Rowe both were older than me and had been in it, and they would calm me down, and they just knew things that were going to happen. Seemed like a lot of times. And he looked at me and he says, "No, we're not." He said, "Look out there at that bunch." He said, "They're not fixing to score." And Repton went 4 downs and out. And those kids just had a certain air about them that they never thought anybody could beat them. Now, were they cocky? Oh, yes, they were extremely, extremely cocky. Anybody around the community would tell you that that bunch didn't mind telling you they were good.
And of course, you did, Coach. I thought you was talking about Coach Rowe. A lot of times would calm you down. You were a very animated coach. A lot of times when I went to many Sandrock games, I remember when I went to saw y'all play Carrollton and Mount Hope. I went and watched those 2 games. You were very animated on the sidelines, and sometimes somebody has to grab a hold of you and kind of pull you back. But it's so fun to watch.
I'm almost ashamed of some of the things I did in my younger years on the sidelines. I gave officials a hard time. I gave everybody a hard time. I had a teacher at Sandrock tell me, a lady that was there almost as long as I was, that I didn't realize that when I would come down the hallway on game day, teachers would go in their room and close the door because they knew the mood I was going to be in. And they just didn't want to have to even speak to me if they could keep from it. And I was about as, I guess on game days, from the time I got up on Fridays, I was about as focused on a single mission as a person could be. And when the game started, I guess I just kind of let it all out.
Yeah. Well, Coach, I guess in a sense, when you first start your job and coaching, is you're more worried about wins than anything else to try to keep your job. But then after a while, you get to figuring out there's a lot more important things than that. It's great to win a state championship, but it's about these kids. And I guess over time, as you're being a coach, you figure out that, hey, I'm a leader for these kids. I want them to be men in life, a lot more important than how many games they win or lose.
Well, I think I felt that way from the very beginning. I have a love for that 85 group of kids. We had a reunion last fall. I had the best time getting back together with those guys. And I still see so many of them still live around here close by. And so I still get to talk to them. And I've seen a lot of my players, and we've had reunions with a lot of the teams that I coached. And, and they tell me how much they appreciate the experience and that means the world to me. It does. And I love those guys like they're my kids too. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've gained out of coaching. You're right. The wins don't mean as much anymore as the relationship with those guys and the relationship with those players and the relationship with all the guys that coached for me over the years. That's what means a lot to me now as I get older.
Yeah, definitely. So, Coach, we had Coach Hughes, our softball coach, on us a few weeks ago, and he said, you're not going to make a ton of money coaching sports or coaching athletics or coaching kids, but God puts you in a place where he wants you to be, and inspiring these kids is so important. And as your career goes on, it's a humbling experience.
Well, I made this statement in my acceptance at the at the AHSA State Hall of Fame, that I felt like I was doing what God wanted me to do, where he wanted me to do it. And, Sandrock didn't have a great football history. A lot of people thought I was crazy for taking the job. My brother was one of them. He told me that I was stupid to take that job. And, but it worked out. And we still live there in the community, go to church there in the community, and, and are a part of a lot of things there. And so God put me where I needed to be, I think. And, 32 years at one school, you don't hear that much anymore. And, but it was a great place for my kids to grow up. We bought an 80-acre farm and built a house there and have some horses. And, we can live in the country in Sandrock and still only be 5 minutes from the school.
Well, Coach, I want to go back before I go a little further. You went against, and Howie had brought up about playing against Coach Benefield, but another fierce rival you had before Sandrock grew as a school and kind of, pulled away from Valley Head. You and Jim Kirby had a big-time rivalry. There was some great football games between you two.
I didn't like him to begin with, and he didn't like me.
And, that was the truth. That was the truth.
Yeah. And then, about 2 years after the 85 team, a year or two after that, we got started to talk, and we ended up being really good friends. And I've been good friends with John and Heath through the years too. And so, I get a lot of that went back to me, not him as much as me, probably just being so young, because I was only 27 when we won the state championship. Being so young, so intense, so fiery that there was a lot of coaches that I didn't allow myself to get close to coaches at other schools, and our rivalry was so intense. I had that talk with Jeff Bullen from Cedar Bluff back a few months ago, and I was telling him, he said, "Boy, I didn't like you, and you didn't like me, and now we're good friends." And but the rivalry got so intense there for a while that we couldn't get along.
Yeah, definitely so. And Coach Kirby and I think we didn't see a lot of eye to eye at times, but maybe starting toward my senior year, he and I got on the same page, and now he's a great inspiration to me now. And he and I became real close friends. We weren't that close when we were playing with each other, but we are very close now. And over time, and like you were talking about, a lot of people didn't like Coach Jacoway, but it's kind of like with Coach Benefield. It's kind of a love-hate thing. A lot of times the hate comes from when a coach is successful, but you have to respect a man for his accomplishments.
Yeah, and I think the players, they may not like the process, but it doesn't mean that they don't like the coach or don't understand why you're doing certain things. And there's a lot of things I did coaching that I wish I could go back and redo. There's some things I said to parents and to kids that I wish I could take back and from my younger years. As I got older, I got a lot more, I guess, measured in the way I talked to kids and the way I talked to the parents and the way I talked to the booster club and everything.
Yeah, definitely so. Well, Coach, I know you coached from 83 to 2014. You had a state championship. You also had a state runner-up. You made, I think, the playoffs 24 of 32 years. You had 228 wins. Of course, you had two stretches where you had really strong football teams, and that was, in that mid-80 to late 80 range, and then, of course, into the late 90s there. And you got to the state championship, played Luverne. Of course, they were a great football team, but that was an outstanding football team also.
That team was great, and the team the year before that lost in the semifinals at Lineville were both probably my two most talented football teams. And that team the year before, I love that group. I love those three teams. It was just, the attitude on those teams was so great that made it so easy to coach those kids. And when we went to Luverne, though, we were a fairly young team. We had graduated a lot of seniors the year before. And I actually kidded my brother. He comes in, he says, hey, I'm getting married this fall. And he gave me the date. And I said, well, I can't be there because that's the day of the state championship game. And that was just kind of kiddingly. We did not think we were going to go to the state championship game. And we thought it was a little bit of a rebuilding year because we had, like I said, we had gone undefeated all the way to the semifinals the year before. And we got hot. Cedar Bluff beat us in game 2. And the things we did in practice the next week, I could probably be sued for. And but it turned us around, and we got better and better as the year went along, caught some breaks in the playoffs, pulled off some wins. And next thing you know, we're in the finals. But now Luverne was a buzzsaw. I'll tell you what, I remember looking at their roster, and they had like 15 kids on the team that were 19 years old. Their whole senior class had held back as the 6th graders, and this was their team that they had, looked forward to for all those years. And Luverne went from being a 2A school when we played them for the state finals to the next year they were the 10th largest 3A in the state in reclassification. And so we were a little bit outmanned that day.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, hey, but it was nice to get to play for that title. Not many kids to do that, and winning the state championship. I wish every kid could experience it. I think sometimes the reason the good Lord let me play on a state championship is I'm allowed to share that experience. Like, being on scoreboard, I know what these kids kind of go through and what to expect. And I wish every kid could play for a state championship.
I've thought the same thing. The experience is, you can't explain it. You cannot explain what that experience is like. And people don't realize how hard it is to get there.
Yeah. And of course, coaching, and moving on, of course, you were the state coach of the year in that 85 year and also the 97 year. But, but then now you have been inducted to the Cherokee County Sports Hall of Fame. You were inducted into the State Hall of Fame. These are great honors. But, but then when you look back, and I'm sure you have reflected back some, it's humbling to know, how many things are attached to your name.
Well, it is. And like I said, the stadium is a bigger deal to my kids and my grandkids than probably to me now. My grandson, they did some team pictures this week, and he made sure all his individual pictures were taken with Russell Jacoway Stadium sign in the background. And, so it's a big deal to him. And my middle grandson, Gunner, used to kid the principal all the time. He was a really good basketball player at Sand Rock. And one night him and the principal's son were like best friends in high school. And Gunner tells Ben East, the principal, he said, well, the stadium's named after my granddaddy. And Ben just looked at him. He said, yeah, I fired him a few years ago. And so that was one of the great remarks I've ever heard. And I kind of looked at Gunner. I said, we put you in your place, didn't you? And of course, Gunner was just laughing. It was just doing it as a joke. But because he had stayed over at their house a lot and stuff. But it was one of the great comebacks I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, Coach, I want to ask you this. Do you have a memorable game that you won that just kind of stands out?
Well, of course, Refton game for the state championship. That was a memorable game, big time memorable game. Beating Springville, and this is going to be odd. This goes back to my kids. Beating Springville to go to the state finals. I mean, they roll into San Rock. They're a 2A school and they're 2 platooning. They're playing everybody one way. But it was at San Rock, and we had lost at Lineville the year before in the semifinals, and we just had a feeling that night nobody was going to beat us. And we were able to hold on to the end of the ball game and win the ball game. And here's why. As soon as that game was over, I was able to walk across the field with my cheerleader daughter on one arm and my manager daughter on the other arm and hugging their necks. And I still remember that to this day.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm glad you hadn't got me on camera right now.
Hey, that's what we're here for, Coach. And that's kind of like I tell people how we do these interviews. We want to know the man as a person more than a football coach, because there's more to people than that.
Yeah.
And I often said that if you get to know a guy personally, you're less apt to criticize. And we need that in sports because these coaches today are sacrificing, and sometimes people give them the wrong message.
Well, and one of my favorite teams, and I can't tell you the year now. This was in the late 90s. We had a couple of down years, and everybody graduated. Everybody in San Rock was like, Coach, we know you're probably not going to win a game. Because we had been like 3-7 the year before and graduated a big senior class. And we had the littlest, runniest looking guys you ever saw in your life. And I worked the dog out on that winter. And I tell people, I wasn't working them so hard to win games. I was working the dog out on them because I was afraid they were going to get hurt. I mean, we were little. We didn't have a lot of talent. We had an all-state wide receiver. We had Josh Stimson at quarterback. We had a really good tight end. And we made the commitment we were going to throw it almost every down. And we ended up winning 7 games, and making the playoffs in a year when we had talent for maybe a 1-9 team. And we made the commitment of just throwing it almost every down. And that was the most fun I ever had. We had nothing to lose. I think we won 7 ball games, and we maybe rushed for 600 yards as a team for the year. I mean, we just didn't run the football. We're playing Sylvania at our place when Brian Mashburn was there, and I think they're ranked 2nd in the state. And we upset them that night, and we had like 3rd and inch, and we're throwing the football because we could not run the football. And we couldn't have beat them again if we played them 10 more times, but on that given night, we did. And made the playoffs. And that was one of my most fun years coaching, was a year when we went to Clay County, and we couldn't scratch against them, of course. But just the idea that we made the playoffs with that group and how they overachieved was a team that I'll always remember.
Well, Coach, sometimes you do your best coaching jobs with teams like that, because a lot of times when the expectations are high, there's a lot of pressure involved.
Oh, yeah, there is. And so you did what everybody said you're supposed to do. Big deal. It's when you took that group that nobody expected to get there, or when you have that big upset, that it means a lot.
Yeah, definitely. So, and of course, that goes to coaching. When you coach these kids, it might happen during practice, it might happen during games, but when that light comes on, that's gratifying for a coach when a kid gets it.
Yeah, and I had some through the years that maybe didn't play until they got to be a senior. And like you said, all of a sudden that light went on, and they were a really good football player their senior year. And I would feel so good for that kid because I knew they were leaving with a really good experience.
Yeah. Well, Coach, of course, a lot of your interest in life. I know you like cycling. I know you're a classic rock fan. I know you go to a lot of concerts. I'm big in that too. So, I guess if you jumped in a vehicle with you, you'd be listening to classic rock. Naturally, but you like auto racing too. So this is the kind of things you do. Do you do a lot of traveling, or you just kind of sort of focus around those type of things?
Well, I still work full time, so I don't get to travel as much as I want to. Went on my first cruise after I retired, went to the Bahamas, and with all the kids, and had a ball. I've been all over the NASCAR circuit. From Indianapolis to Charlotte to Texas to Atlanta, Talladega, I don't know how many times. I actually go with principal at Sandrock and another principal and some other guys. We all go together every year now. And yeah, I'm big into the classic rock. Saw Santana 2 weeks ago and going to see the Doobie Brothers this coming Saturday. Saw the Rolling Stones about a year ago. And so most of the old classic rock groups I have seen in person. And yeah, my cycling is my way to stay in shape. I rode the Bobox Bama, rode the Cheehaw Challenge a couple months ago. And so my wife says I own way too many. I've got 7 bicycles. My wife says I got way too much money invested in bicycles.
I guess you're with bicycles like I am with clothes, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not so big on the clothes, but she'll laugh at me like I've got a carbon fiber road bike, and that's like one of my that's more prized to me than my truck, I guess. And I'm not gonna let anything happen to that bicycle. And
well, I know, Coach.
I love 1,000 miles on that thing.
Yeah. I love it. Of course, I saw the Doobie Brothers last year in Huntsville. They were great.
I was there. for that.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I saw 38 Special here not too long ago. We saw.
I was at that concert.
Yeah, the one we went to. We went to the one up in Cherokee's. One we went to.
Okay, I went when they were in. I went when they were on Sand Mountain.
And Albertville, we went to see. We had already made plans.
Good and the Destroyers.
Boy, and they are still. It's 38 Special can still crank it.
Hey, and I'm an old guy, but to me, that's the greatest era of music. And I've got a long list of people I've seen. I'm going to see Styx and Foreigner this summer, and like I said, the Doobie Brothers this coming weekend. Got tickets later in the summer to see Earth, Wind, and Fire in Chicago, in Atlanta, and so my youngest grandson actually on his 15th birthday, he wanted to go to an old rock concert. So I took him to Nashville, to the Grand Ole Opry to see Earth, Wind, and Fire. And I think he was probably the youngest person in there. But he had a ball. He loved it.
Oh, yeah, it's great. Of course, me and my wife, we've got tickets to go see REO Speedwagon and Train over in Atlanta in August. I'm looking forward to that because I have never seen REO Speedwagon. But, yeah, me and my wife love concerts. And I get your family, I guess, is involved in a lot of times in the concerts you go to.
Yeah, my kids like to go. My oldest daughter, she loves the old rock music, and my grandkids have gone with me some. I took my oldest and youngest daughter a year or so ago to Tuscaloosa to see the old surfer band,
Beach Boys.
Beach Boys. And we had a ball, and I just told them, I said I was teaching them a little sophistication. We had a daddy-daughter date night that night. We had a good time.
Yeah, that's great stuff, Coach.
I've got a sister that's 7 years older than me, and she likes to get out. So we've gone to see. She's gone with me to see some stuff, and so for every concert, it's a different crowd.
Of course, Coach, I know you're kind of spread out, all over, all over Cherokee County now. But do you still take a lot of interest in high school athletics?
Oh yes, one of the great things of my job now, I am synergistic. The company I work for is an energy conservation company, and they have a contract with Cherokee County, and I'm the energy specialist. I'm in charge of running the program, and so I go in all the schools. I audit the schools. I go in and check on things. I set all the HVAC controls, things of that nature. Now, I had to go through 3 weeks of training. They had to totally recircuit my brain when I started this job because I didn't know one type of air unit from another, and all I knew was X's and O's. And I tell people I got brainwashed. But I still talk to coaches all the time when I go in. Some of my audits are during school days. Some of them are at night when nobody's in the building. I work a lot of odd hours. But I talk to coaches all the time in schools. I had a nice talk with Coach Ragsdale down at Spring Garden today. They were getting ready for a 7-on-7 this afternoon. We just sat there and talked terminology. I talked to Coach Ricky Austin at Spring Garden, the girls basketball coach, all the time. And we just talked general coaching philosophy. And we've gotten so close, actually, that his kids call me granddaddy now. and Cooper that played down there a few years ago. He refers to me as granddad. Ace, that's his daughter, that's will be going to Alabama another year. I consider her just another granddaughter, and so I've gotten real close with their family. And Dinah, they're just really good people. But especially when young coaches come in, I've really enjoyed sitting and talking to them, especially the ones that ask a lot of questions. Because when I was a young coach, I was that guy. I used to wear Bobby Joe Johnson at center out when I first came to Sand Rock. We had some basically one-on-one coaching clinics all the time. He helped me so much. So if I can help a young coach, at any of the schools, I'm going to.
Yeah, that's great, Coach. And Coach, of course, we've got media days coming up July the 20th on a Saturday for Cherokee County. Are you planning to be there?
Nope.
You're not going to try to go? hey, I would like to.
I will probably be on my bicycle that day somewhere.
Okay. Yeah.
As far as having an active role and do anything, I went back to Sand Rock and volunteered for 2 or 3 years. Josh Bates is the junior high coach at Sand Rock, and he played for me. And he came to me and he said, "Look, I'm kind of short on experienced assistants." He said, "Could you come help me?" And so for 3 years I did. And it really pushed me. I would have to quit work early, go up there and help him, and then go back to work a lot of nights. But I enjoyed it. I really did. It was fun working with Josh there. And my grandson was playing junior high football, and I enjoyed that. But nowadays, my football is pretty much limited to, like I said, if a coach has a question, I will talk to them all day long. If they want to pick my brain, I'll tell them anything I know. And if they don't, that's fine too.
Yeah, well, that's great, Coach. Of course, I think I sent you a message on this. I'd like to get a couple of copies of that Fire on the Mountain because the guys I played,
when you're in the county, I will make a point to meet you or meet you that day or something. I've got stacks on. We thought it was going to be a bestseller, and I'm still waiting for it to take off.
Oh, are you? Well, I'm going to tell you this. I mean, because the guys I played football with, and of course I wrote about it. I did a story. I wrote a story after I had my liver transplant about how I saw things. How it built up to to where I am today, and I wrote a lot about that. But I read that story, and I told a lot of the guys I played football with, and a lot of them haven't seen it. And I said it's so true to form. I said you got to read it. Now there's a couple of them that have. But I'd like to get a couple of copies from you because, it was inspiring, I know, for your guys, but it's also inspiring for us because, I still say that Sand Rock, part of that Sand Rock football game, become a piece of us and made us who we became. Yeah. So I think it was kind of a trade out that night. That game was probably one of the most important games played between those two schools.
At the very worst, my grandson, Gatlin Cox, will be one of the representatives for Sand Rock that day, and he will have your 2 books.
Okay. All right.
I mean,
I'll be glad to pay. I'll be glad to pay you for it.
Oh, no, you won't either. You're not paying for them. I've got, like I said, I've got stacks of them. I still kid Scott. I've been in his office before, and I said, "These books over here, did you not ever get them sold?" And he just looks at me like, "No, I still got them." But I made a comment earlier about doing a presentation for a group of teachers at a workshop a month or so ago about leadership. And I actually gave all of those teachers that were there a copy of that book to read because I told them, I said, this book is about a special group of young guys that had a great leadership quality about it.
Yeah, that's definitely good. How is there
that's
anything
the way I'll go to my grave remembering that group.
Yeah. Well, Coach, one more. I want to ask you one question, and then I'll turn it over to Howie. But when you finish, when your day is done, how do you want to be remembered?
Oh, man, that's tough. Good family man. I would like to remember it as a person that did it the right way. I don't think none of us do it the right way all the time because none of us are perfect. But I hope I did it the right way more than I did it the wrong way. And And as far as a coach in my community, I hope as I'm remembered as the guy that got Sand Rock football going and put it on the map. Sand Rock had never been really a football school before. And I'm so proud now to see the facilities. And Sand Rock's had some rough years, but this year should be a good year for them. And but I just hope I'm remembered as a person that tried to do things the right way.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Coach. Well, I sure appreciate you coming on here. I know we've kind of known of each other, but I consider you a friend. I've always respected you as a coach. I was against you for a few times there, but being in the media as long as I have, you root for people, and that's the most important thing.
Well, unlike some coaches, for the most part, I enjoyed talking to the media. My grandkids, we went out to Las Vegas, and I got talking to a musician in a restaurant we went into, and they're like, you could carry on conversation with a wall. And I just like to talk, and which I think is what's made the energy program that I do now in our county has been very successful. We're on like our 4th contract now, and I think a lot of it has to do with I just enjoy getting out and talking to people, and I've been able to sell them on an idea, and we've been able to save $3 million in our county on energy conservation by conserving energy in our schools over these 10 years. And a lot of it has to do with I just like to talk to people.
Yeah. Sell yourself.
And and coaching, people make it complicated, but it's just common sense. Coaching, a lot of coaching is just, to me, is treat people right, and they'll do what they need to do for you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't really understand that football is a very simple game. A lot of people makes it complicated, especially when you listen to analysts. And it's not that complicated of a football game. Football is not complicated.
Tommy Tuberville made the comment one time. He said, "This isn't rocket science."
Yeah. Well, Howie, I'll turn it over to you and let you close things out. But, Coach, once again, thank you so much for coming on. It was wonderful speaking with you and sharing some stories and learn a little bit about you.
I appreciate that somebody in the media still remembers me. I've enjoyed it because, like I said, I enjoy talking, and I could go on for hours telling stories.
Well, I know Jeff Allen still thinks a lot of you.
Y'all do a great job up there with the scoreboard show. I still, to this day, we go to a ball game, and that's the first thing I'm gonna turn on when it's over. And then when I get home, I'm gonna turn it on in the house until I go to bed to listen to all the scores and everybody calling in. So, that to me has been a really good thing for high school.
Yeah, definitely has. I hope it continues on.
I agree.
Yeah.
Coach, I've got one question for you, then we'll let you go. You started out in '83, the year you don't want to remember, being over all the way to 2014. How much did you have to change your coaching style from '83 all the way to 2014?
Okay, I spoke at a clinic a few years ago, and that was the topic of my clinic. I won a state championship running 3-back power I. I went to the state finals running 2-back pro I, and we were throwing it about 20 times a game, very pro-style passing game by then. And then ended up my career winning a couple of region championships, spread from one sideline to the other, throwing it 30 times a game. Now, how I worked the kids, I didn't change a whole lot. And that was a big drawing card for me to stay at Sand Rock. Those kids were not always the most athletic, but if you told them jump off a building would make them better, they would go do it. And so my style of how we trained, now I learned things, we got better at it, but how we trained, how hard we worked did not change a whole lot from year one to all the way through the end of my career.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've watched you coach a lot of games, play a lot of teams and everything, and like Phil said, you were very animated on the sideline, and it was a lot of times it's more fun watching you than actually the game.
The last game I coached, I got into it with the officials just before halftime against Cedar Bluff, and I kept looking across the field, and the fans were hollering, "Throw him out! Throw him out!" And the principal walked down there, start second half while we were warming up, laughing. He said, "Do you know where you were at?" And I said, "No." He said, "You were standing on the SR in the middle of the field." And so I didn't know at that time that was going to be my last game. I didn't know I was going to retire and take another job. But I told him, I said, "Well, I guess I understand why the Cedar Bluff fans were hollering, throw him out, because I was in the middle of the field." But I was right, and the officials changed the call, and they didn't throw me out. So,
And that's why he's able to hear what the fans are saying, because you're halfway on their side.
I was so close to them, they could hear me. Yeah.
You can shake their hand.
Yeah.
But Coach Jacoway, thanks for joining us. We've kept you a little bit longer than we told you we'd keep you around, but we'd love to have you back on the show sometime. And before we get going, if you would give a shout out to whoever you want to.
Just the kids that played for me. Nobody in particular, and I'm not going to choose one, and the coaches. I had so many coaches. You know, at the end of my career, I had like 4 guys on my staff that had played for me, and that was special that those guys came back. And actually, Stephen Chestnut, that replaced me at Sand Rock, was a former player of mine. And I guess if I had to name coaches, though, it would be that original staff. James Rowe and Roland Hendon, they kind of kept my feet on the ground. And like Phil said, they grabbed me every now and then on the sidelines and pulled me back over, off the field. And, I was at Sand Rock 32 years. I only had 2 defensive coordinators in 32 years.
Wow.
And James Rowe, and then I had Jeff Norris, who was with me for, at that 32, he was there 20-something years. And so, we had a lot of stability within the coaching staff. For a small school, that's unusual. And but just the community of Sand Rock, I couldn't have picked a better place to live.
That's one thing. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Phil, but that's one thing that I kind of wanted to mention was Sand Rock's community there. It's all family, and they all stay there. They don't really move off, and so you're coaching your players' kids and grandkids.
Oh yeah, I never got to grandkids. I thought I was going to get there for a while, but I did coach a ton of my players' kids toward the end of the year. And a lot of my players, when I retired, were the officers in the booster club at that point and running that. And then, like I said, I had several former players on my staff. And seeing those guys come back around any part of the program was a big deal.
Well, Coach, one thing I want to add, of course, I've known Roland Hendon for years. I went to church at Moon Lake Baptist Church in Mentone because he lived in Mentone. And I did not know he was coaching football at that time. It never came up in a subject, even though I played at Valley Head. We never ever talked about it. We talked about a lot of other things.
Yeah. He was on the staff and then later became principal at Sand Rock.
Yeah, he was principal.
And we still see him in Carolina a lot. We still, not as much as we'd like to, but we're still all very close.
Yeah, super guy. I just always have thought the world of him. Of course, James Rowe, little story I heard what he said. I think one of the coaches, something from Brilliant, and of course this is third party, I heard it, asked him, what would you do different if you played Valley Head over again? And I reckon he told him, he said, well, we did about all we could do. He said, but I'm going to tell you this. He said, you better bring a helmet full of chin straps because you're going to need them.
Yeah, that sounds like something he would say. And because, those, not just that one game, all those games back then with Valley Head were very physical.
Yeah.
That was kind of old style football.
Yeah, definitely. I miss that. You did score points, 25, 30 per game at times, but, really you could beat somebody 21-0 and you hammered them. You don't see these 54-14 games. You didn't see many of those back then.
A lot of the things I taught back in that's one way I did change. A lot of things I taught early in my career were not legal. Or not even legal now. The way we tackled, the way we cut block, things like that. And we didn't think anything about it. It wasn't dirty football back then. And those things are not even legal now.
Yeah. Well, a lot of time, of course, and I sing this, y'all run the pick plays a lot.
No, we didn't do that. I'm gonna be like the guy at Clemson. We don't pick. But I got news for you. As the years went along, there was a whole lot more of them in the offense. I was always kind of, and I was influenced a lot by Raymond Weaver at Collinsville as far as the passing game. And we kind of had a love-hate relationship through the years. But he did influence me a lot early in my career as he had some success throwing the football. And that was something that we could do that was a little bit different than what other people were doing. So all through my career, we threw the ball a lot. And I think that had a lot to do with our success.
Well, speaking of Collinsville, I meant to bring this up, but you played football at Collinsville before you ended up at Sand Rock. Of course, they turned out to be your big rival, but you played on the 1975 state championship basketball team, didn't you?
I sat on the bench on the 1985 state championship.
Hey, that's all that counts. Yeah.
I always use that as an example with my kids. I said, your mom and daddies get mad if you don't get to play. They get mad at me. I said, let me tell you something, guys. I said, I didn't play a whole lot, but I loved L.D. Dobbins at Collinsville to the end of the earth. He treated me fairly. I wasn't real good. I was a decent football player and a bad basketball player. And the man was always, I was a pallbearer at his funeral. We were always very close. And, but I use that as an example a lot with my kids that, just because you're not playing doesn't mean the coach is not treating you right.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks once again, Coach. We could probably talk all night, but I guess we're going to try to let you go.
I don't know if y'all could or not, but I could.
Coach, thanks for joining us. Sorry that we kept you so long, but it's great having you on. We want to get you back on again, and looking forward to seeing you at a Sand Rock game. I know you're going to be there because your grandson's going to be running the rock.
I'm always there, right? My daughter's the cheer coach, and so we usually sit with her right in front of the cheerleaders. And but yeah, I still enjoy getting out to the games. I try to go watch the other people in the county play some, and I'm like a fan now. I can sit up there and tell you what all the coaches doing wrong.
So appreciate you joining us, Coach, and best of luck with your job and for your grandson this year, and looking forward to you being back on very soon.
Hey guys, I have thoroughly enjoyed it.
You're welcome back
Thank
anytime,
you,
Coach. Just let us know.
Thank you.
So that was Coach Russell Jacoway from Sand Rock, and Phil, a great coach and a great person.
Oh yeah, it's wonderful to hear stories, background stories. I mean, he won a lot of football games, but there's more to Russell Jacoway than winning football games. He's a great individual. At the time, like we talked about, I wasn't a fan of his when I played football because I was against him, but you couldn't help. It's like Coach Benefield, it's a love-hate thing, but you respect the man. But then when it's all said and done, you learn to like him as a person, and that's what it's all about.
Well, look who decided to join us here off a special assignment here at the last here, Mr. QB1 Randall Cunningham.
Let me tell you what stinks is sitting here trying to keep us online and keep us up and running on my special assignment, and y'all getting to talk to a great coach like Coach Jack.
Yeah.
I had 147 questions to ask him, and I couldn't get in, and I came close to cutting Phil's camera off one time and just popping in, but I didn't.
Yeah. It's great to have him on. That's the good thing about Coach Jacoway. You just ask him a short question, he's got a great answer.
Great interview. Interview.
And while we're talking about this, Randy, before we get too carried away, if you're watching us now on Facebook, go to YouTube, like, share, subscribe, all the social media plots. I will always get to it, Randy, if you'd give me time, but you always cut me off before I get a chance to say it. But go to YouTube, follow River City Media, go to the website, RiverCity-Media.com, and you'll find something on there that you like. Randy, it's all yours.
I may stay in the producer role. It was nice to be able to put up some facts and figures. One thing broke while y'all were on the air, and I just wanted to hit it real fast. Ole Miss, third base, Andrew Fisher, all-SEC baseball player, transferred to the University of Tennessee, announced it just a few minutes ago. One of the biggest gets in the transfer portal all year. So it broke less than 10 minutes ago. Andrew Fisher, Ole Miss third baseman, all-SEC player, to the Tennessee Vols.
The strong just get stronger, don't they?
Yeah, the rich get richer. It seems like you get on top of the on top of things. It's amazing how things work out for you. You know, they had a lot of losses, but they're going to have a lot of bring-ins that'll set right in. You know, of course, big thing for Tennessee, as long as they've got pitching, you can just plug everybody else in.
Excellent. Got a
Is
picture of State the other day. Hey, Phil, go ahead, Howie.
is Raleigh Fanger still going to be pitching for Tennessee next year? Or is he finally going to graduate?
He's 4 years older than me. They're making him graduate finally.
Yeah, I think they finally. Yeah, I think I think he was playing when I first started getting season tickets to Tennessee football games.
Me and him we're in a fraternity together in '85. So, hey, Phil, one question I wanted to ask Coach Jacoway, and maybe you can add something to it. Is I called several of his games back, Leroy Stansel and myself. But the 3-back I offense that he ran early in his career, how did they block it? Just like a traditional I offense, or did they use both of those backs as a lead back?
It's a power set. They probably run traps out of it and things like that. But mainly it's just a power set where, you know, you're going to run a lot of times to the strong side. But, you know, you're not going to do a whole lot of it. I know a lot of Sandrock teams, they basically just ran the football. I know one year I went to scout Sandrock for Coach Kirby, and they was playing Spring Garden, and they run the power I. And they had a running back who's number 29, and I was sitting there writing down stuff, and I thought, crap, I don't need this. So I told John, hey, I said, well, what did you get out of Sandrock? I said, John, you stopped number 29. And I said, they're very good defensively. If you stop number 29, they'll not move the football. So Valley Head beat them 6-0 on a 90-yard run on the first play of the fourth quarter on a quick pitch on 3rd and 20. And they beat them 6-0. And Sandrock never moved the football. And John came up to me after the game. He goes, great scouting report.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was basically it. And they shut them out 6-0. But, yeah, back in those days, he just mainly depended on running the football. And then he started getting some throwing quarterbacks, and Lance Mackey, I think, kind of got, you know, some of that started. Then, you know, and then later on, he had several real good quarterbacks later on in his career, and he kind of changed things up more. But early on, you know, he didn't have the athletes. I mean, Sandrock, like he said, have never been known for foot speed. So he had to outwork folks, and using that power I was a way of doing that.
I remember that year he was talking about when he defeated Savannah. I was on the sideline for Savannah keeping stats that night, and his offense was spread, no joke, from sideline to sideline. There was one on Savannah's sideline, wide receiver. There's another one on the hashes there, and then all the way across the field there. And he just chunked the ball all over the field that night and ended up defeating Savannah by upset that night.
Yeah.
Howie, we got the show Thursday night. We're going to recap that pay-per-view from this weekend. Kind of a lot of interesting twists and turns kind of took place. Yeah,
I got the I don't remember the name of the show. Y'all got me doing so many shows right now, I can't remember what they are. It's still real to me. Wrestling show will be on Thursday night. Join me, QB1, and possibly Jeremy. You never know if he's going to show up or not. But we are going to do the recap. A lot of news breaking this week as far as wrestling news, not only on the baseball side with Randy and the Tennessee news, but wrestling news. A lot of it's coming on. A lot of news breaking this week. And join us, the recap of the Money in the Bank that took place Saturday night, and then be talking about all the news that we just talked about. That'll be Thursday night on It's Still Real to Me. And be sure to stay here with Beyond the Booth. Got a lot of shows coming up, a lot of coaches, some players coming up. Guys, you know what happened this past Thursday night? They shot the fireworks. That means it's football time, boys.
Yeah. Once the fireworks is shot, it's football season. And, of course, Randy, you don't need to forget who we're going to have on next Monday night. Going to be a great show. I'm
going to plug it real fast. Jeff Flanagan, who was just hired from the ACC to move to the SEC in an attempt to slow down or to speed up the replay process at the games. And Phil can talk about this. The replay officials are actually in Birmingham, and it's not the fastest process when we're in Knoxville, and they've got to get on the phone or their headset. I'm sure it's some, but now they've doubled the crews, and Jeff's going to be here to talk about the replay process and what's it going to be like this year. You know, we're just lucky to have a contact through Frankie Culpepper, a good friend of the show, to bring in an SEC official, and we'll have him on and we'll be able to talk to him. And hey, at Phil, we'll open it up to questions if people want to ask Jeff a question, and maybe we can spread it out a little bit.
Yeah, of course, the SEC office is right down here next to the hotel where I'm at. We went over and visited today, went across over to the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. I got some pictures there, people, Bear Bryant, all the things with him and Conridge Holloway, Bart Starr, and, all the people that lived in Alabama that were big sports figures. And it's neat to walk through and see all that. But the SEC office is right over here, and I'm sure that's where the studio set up for them for the replay of those games. It's a huge office over here. You walk in and they've got a few pictures and whatnot, but most of it is an office building.
That is correct. I think he is there. So, guys, great show. Y'all did a great job with Coach Jacoway. Someone we got to put on our list to bring back every 6 months, Phil. What great stories.
Yeah, definitely. So, I got to see a lot of the games or played in a lot of the games against him. They came a long way. I remember my sophomore year when they went 0-10, the wheels went off on that game, and it was 31-0 at halftime. Of course, Coach Kirby wouldn't let us go in that locker room. You were talking about the locker room, Howie. We were right beside Sandrock. Coach Kirby wouldn't let us. We would dress in there or come in there for the pregame, but at halftime, we never went in the locker room. We went down to the end of the stadium, and it's not there anymore, but there was a cow pasture right at the end of the fence, and we were petting cows at halftime, and Coach Kirby got so mad at us. The cows were moving, we was over there petting them, and he was very animated and mad at us. He got so mad at us in the second half. He goes, if y'all don't score in the second half, he goes, when we get back to Valley Head, we are going to practice. And, of course, we didn't score, but he came on the bus after the game and told us, he goes, guys, he said, I said a few things I probably shouldn't have said. He said, we're not going to practice, and blah, blah. And of course, and he went through, what we did wrong. But, when he first came, we struggled too. We were like Sandrock. We lost our first two. They lost their first two. They kind of self-destructed in the first half. And it was a building process. And, Sandrock kind of grew up just like we did. We kind of parallel each other. Jacoway's team was a year after ours, but, it was a fierce rivalry there for a long time.
How many, kind of curious you're talking about that. I'm wondering how many schools in the state of Alabama can say they went over in 1 year and 2 years later undefeated win a state championship.
I tried to look that up, Howie, while they were talking. I got on the Alabama site, and I could not find anybody that had went winless and 2 years later went undefeated, won a state championship. I couldn't find another example.
Yeah, I think they went maybe 8-4. I think they went 7-3, won the first round, and then they played us in the second round. I think they were 8-4 that year, and then went 15-0 after that. So, that's an amazing turnaround.
They would have been 0-10 in '83.
Yes,
they went 0-10, 7-3, or actually it was 8-4 with the loss to y'all, and then 15-0. Think about it. Their sophomore class didn't win anything in '83, and in '85 they were seniors, and they went 15-0 and won the state championship. That's incredible.
Definitely. Yeah.
Hey guys, couple more. We'll get off of here. We made the announcement. There'll be some press releases. RiverCity-Media is the official host for Hickson High School football starting in August, and we are looking to hire someone to do color commentary. If you've ever been in radio or you would like to learn how to do it, hit me up on RiverCity-Media, and we need a couple of brave souls that's willing to come up, and we're going to screw everything up. We're going to make mistakes. It's not going to be right. It'll take us about 4 games probably to stay on all game, but live, you can hear your baby son and hear his name called here on RiverCity-Media. Got a great schedule too, guys. We play Soddy Daisy, Red Bank, East Ridge, Ottawa, East Hamilton. If your kid plays in the Chattanooga area at a public school, we play them all from Hickson. So we'll have them all on there at least once as we get around the area.
Of course, a little plug for Northeast Alabama too. We have media days in Cherokee County Saturday, July the 20th, over in Cherokee County. Then on the following Tuesday, I think it's the 23rd, we will be at Etowah County. The 25th, we will be at Marshall County, and then the 26th, we'll have Jackson and DeKalb County media days coming up. Football's here. That's always great. It's great to have the coaches on and hear from them and getting to speak to the kids and letting them talk just a little bit, because it's good PR for them. And I'm looking forward to that, because it's always fun, because that's a lot of times the only time you actually get to see any of the coaches.
And on the 26th, like last year, we'll have interviews from media days, the DeKalb Jackson portion here on RiverCity-Media. We'll try to talk to Coach Pruitt at Pisgah. We'll try to talk to Coach Nelson at Sylvania, and some people that come to our that's part of the RiverCity-Media family. Speaking of that, Howie, we're getting close to every week with the Tanner Nelson Show. It's going to be different this year. Going to have Coach Nelson, but we're also going to have, band director, cheerleader sponsor. Going to open it up a little more to the school.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to talk with those people next week. What my ideal plan is to have a full Friday night preview before the season starts. That way we can talk to the cheerleader coach and see
Right.
what to expect before the game, the pep rallies, victory lines, and all that. Talk to the band director and see what music, which I already know that, but talk to him, see how he decided what music is going to be played and all that stuff. Then have Coach Nelson on and talk about the seniors that's coming up, and have like a full Friday night football preview from Sylvania.
And Wing, August 6th.
Yeah. And then, of course, this week I've been at Transplant Games of America down here in Birmingham. Hey, it's been a wonderful experience. I wish everybody could have went through what I've went through. Of course, ended up getting a bronze medal in team basketball. And, and when you kind of think about it, we had 2 liver transplant recipients, 2 kidney transplant recipients, and a heart transplant recipient that played on the basketball team. And it's just, it's an amazing bond that we had playing the basketball game. And I was so thrilled for the other guys to win a medal because it took a lot. 3 of us played tennis on the day of the 2 basketball games during that night, but we were able to pull out the bronze medal. We could have been in the gold medal game. We were up by 9 in the second half and lost by 2. But it was a great experience, a lot of fun down here. You meet a lot of people, and I wish people could, go through this. I mean, you transplant families and all that stuff. It's been a whole lot of fun. Great experience.
We didn't get to do it tonight, but we are going to do a show, and we're going to give Phil a little distance and let him process this. And maybe a week or 2 from now, we'll sit down with him and hopefully his beautiful wife, and we'll turn the cameras the other way. And Howie and I will interview them about this week of the transplant game. Phil, you up to doing that in maybe a week or so?
Yeah, a lot of stories to tell, and she's got a lot of stories to tell. It was a great experience for her too. Very humbling. It's just a wonderful. We're planning to go 2 years from now, wherever it may be, because you meet so many people all over the country that have the same story, same type of story you do.
Yeah, don't lie about it, Randy. It's all Phil could do to get through this show here after playing all those games of tennis and basketball. So
Chrissy is sitting there with an icy hot and a cold bath and an ice plunge for her crippled husband right now.
That's what I was going to say. The reason you only see Phil from basically the neck up, he is sitting in an ice tub right now, icing himself down.
Hey, thank goodness I'm able to say it. I don't have any legs left. Chrissy's a little under the weather, but yeah. Hey, it was tough. I'm going to tell you. You know what? It feels like I've rode a horse for about 2 days.
Well, hey, I got one quick question for you, Phil, and then Randy, you can do whatever you want to do. Did you know the guys that you played the basketball game with before you did this, or what? How did you get the team together?
We really didn't know we were going to have a team. Guys just signed up, and I found out last week, oh, yeah, we're going to have a basketball team. So we weren't I wasn't prepared. but there was 4 other guys that signed up for basketball. One got hurt. We were down to 4. He got hurt the very first game, messed his shoulder up, and he didn't get to run in a couple of the track things that he was going to run in. So we lost him, but we were down to 4. And I really feel like if we'd been at full strength with our 5 full players, we would have won the thing. The team we lost to in the semifinals by 2, we just kind of ran out of gas, I think. And then the team in the finals, they lost to Louisiana in overtime. So, we felt like if we could have been at full strength and 3 of us didn't have to play tennis, we'd have had a chance to win a gold medal.
Randy, it's all yours.
It almost makes me laugh thinking about Phil playing basketball.
Yeah.
How many threes did you hit, Phil?
None. No, I wasn't a shooter. I've got shoulder problems. I did score 2 points in the last game, but I've having a shoulder issue, and I was just mainly the screen setter, foul if they were going to the hoop for an easy basket, kept everybody pushed out. Because you didn't have to worry about the officials calling anything away from the ball, so I just pushed people out from under the goal and kept them away from easy baskets. And you never got called. The only time I got called for I got called for 2 or 3 fouls, but one time I got called for a foul, I didn't touch the guy. And I told any other time I had pushed people all over the place, but this one time I didn't touch him. I told the referee, I said I didn't touch him. He was looking at me laughing. I said, he jumped into me. I never even touched him. I said, you don't have a good view of the play. I said, but I didn't touch him.
Phil played 1984 defensive Valley head tackle basketball.
Yeah, that was it. And that was it. A lot of hands. Yeah.
So you're saying if there's ever a role player, you was it?
I was it. I was definitely the role player. I've substituted and gave some minutes to give a guy or 2 a rest, and that's basically what I did.
So we know.
I'll tell you what, Phil. I'm really proud of you being able to go down there and do all that stuff, and I'm glad you had a great time and everything. So just take it easy for the next day, because I know, even though I know you're going on vacation next week, but still, you need a little recovery time.
I'm looking forward to getting back home.
Hey, let's put it out. We plugged everything but WQSB Friday night, Phil. When y'all starting?
I don't know the date. I hadn't even talked to Jeff. We were just kind of tied up with media days right now. It'll be probably around the 20th, 25th of August, somewhere in that neighborhood. It'll be week 0, but it's going to be here before you know it.
All right.
And the good thing about it, Randy, I just want to touch on it real quick, is you talking about the DeKalb Jackson media days. I'll try to be there. We've had a lot of the coaches and some of the players that's going to be there already on this show. So looking forward to seeing how their summer went.
We can always get Coach Benefield to talk to us, because he actually likes Howie. Don't know. I think it's the Falcons, Phil. Don't know.
Yeah. Hey, Coach Benefield likes everybody. You don't mind.
Don't like me. He told me I don't know anything about football because I didn't know the object of throwing the football at tight end.
No, I don't know about that. No, Coach Benefield, if he throws you under the bus, he likes you.
Well, he must
because he does that to a lot of people.
He must really be fond of me. How out of here tonight?
If you're following us on Facebook, go to YouTube. Follow us on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe. Tell a friend. Tell a family. Let everybody know about it. Eventually,
get up for YouTube.
The what?
Get your 4-year-old on YouTube and have them follow RiverCity-Media.
There you go. They got cartoons on there they can watch. So
yeah.
Follow RiverCity-Media. Go to the website. Follow RiverCity-Media on the website. The man over there way to the left of me is Mr. QB1, Randy Cunningham. The man in the middle is Phil Harris. Let's hope he can make it out of the hotel room for supper tonight. I'm the Howie Chaney for RiverCity-Media. This is Beyond the Booth. Good night. God bless. Safe travels, Phil.
All right. Thank you.